Who are you? It seems like a simple question. You might answer with your name, your memories, your hopes, your fears. You are the sum of your experiences in this one precious life. But what if you are wrong? What if the person you call yourself is just the latest chapter in a book that has been written over centuries? What if your soul has been telling stories long before this one began? For many, reincarnation is a comforting thought, a chance to learn, to grow, to find peace across multiple lifetimes. But there is a darker side to this phenomenon, a side that a rational, modern world refuses to acknowledge. What if the memories that bleed through from a past life are not of peace, but of profound, violent trauma? What if the person you were before was not a good person at all? And what if the proof was so undeniable, it threatened to erase the person you are now? Tonight, we are exploring 3 chillingly credible true cases of reincarnation. These are not stories of spiritual awakening. They are stories of memories that haunt, of violent deaths that refuse to be forgotten, and of identities shattered by the terrifying realization that this life is not their first. Our first story is one of the most famous and meticulously documented cases of reincarnation in American history. It is a story that has been scrutinized by researchers, veterans, and skeptics, and it centers on a little boy from Louisiana who was tormented by the final, fiery moments of a man who died 60 years before he was born. This is the story of James Leininger. From the moment he could talk, little James was obsessed with airplanes. His parents, Bruce and Andrea, thought it was a cute, typical phase for a toddler. But then, the nightmares began. Around his 2nd birthday, James started waking up in the night, screaming in absolute terror. He would thrash in his bed, kicking his legs at the ceiling, yelling the same horrifying phrases over and over. Airplane on fire. Little man can't get out. The nightmares grew more frequent, more violent. During the day, he would slam his toy planes into the furniture, yelling, "Plane crash on fire!" His parents were deeply concerned, but had no explanation. Then, the details started to emerge. Details a 2-year-old child could not possibly know. One day, his mother gave him a toy plane with a bomb-like object under its belly. James looked at it and correctly identified it not as a bomb, but as a drop tank, an external fuel tank. His parents, who had no military background, had to look the term up. He was right. He began drawing vivid, detailed pictures of aerial dogfights between American and Japanese planes. He would sign his drawings James 3. When asked why, he said calmly, "Because I'm the 3rd James." The most chilling revelations came when he was playing with his planes. His father, Bruce, pointed out that the planes were Corsairs. James corrected him. He said he flew a Corsair. He then told his father that during takeoff, Corsairs always used to veer to the left and blow out their tires. Bruce, a history buff, researched this. He was stunned to find that this was a well-known, dangerous quirk of the F-4U Corsair. The boy claimed he had flown from a boat. When his parents asked for the name of the boat, he said, without hesitation, the Natoma. Bruce researched the Natoma and found it. It was a small aircraft carrier, the USS Natoma Bay, which had served in the Pacific during World War II and was present at the Battle of Iwo Jima. Now deeply unnerved, but determined to find answers, Bruce began to treat this not as a fantasy, but as an investigation. He asked his son, James, "Do you remember who else was on the boat with you?" The little boy thought for a moment and said, Jack Larson. Through painstaking research, Bruce was able to track down veterans who had served on the USS Natoma Bay. He found a pilot roster, and on that roster, there was indeed a pilot named Jack Larson. He was still alive. Bruce also found something else. On March 3rd, 1945, during a mission over Iwo Jima, a single American pilot from the Natoma Bay had been shot down and killed. His name was James M. Huston Jr. He was the only pilot from that ship to die in that battle. The pieces were slotting together into a picture that was both incredible and terrifying. The little boy who signed his name James III seemed to be the reincarnation of James M. Huston Jr., the second James. The final, undeniable proof came from James Huston's surviving sister, Anne. The Leininger family contacted her. She was skeptical, but agreed to speak with them. During their conversations, Bruce would mention things his son had said. Anne confirmed detail after stunning detail. Little James had claimed his father was an alcoholic who had smashed everything in the house when he was a child. Anne confirmed this was true of her and James Huston's father. He claimed to have had a model of a Corsair made by his father. Anne confirmed her father had made such a model for her brother. But the most emotional moment came when Anne sent the Leiningers a package of photos and items that had belonged to her deceased brother. In the package was a photo of a young James Huston standing in front of his Corsair plane. When 2-year-old James Leininger saw the photo, he paused. He looked at it intently, then pointed at the plane. He said, "That's my airplane." Then he pointed to the young man in the photo. "And that," he said, "was me." James Leininger's nightmares eventually faded as he grew older. But the case remains a landmark in reincarnation research. It is a profoundly disturbing story, not of a ghost, but of a soul trapped in a loop of trauma. A young man's violent, fiery death in the Pacific Ocean, replaying 60 years later in the mind of a screaming toddler in his quiet Louisiana bedroom.
I didn't mean to.
Our second story comes from India, a culture where reincarnation is a deeply held belief. But this is not a story of spiritual karma. It is a chilling true crime case where the key witness to a murder was the victim himself, reborn. In the city of Agra, a man named Suresh Verma ran a small radio and television shop. One day in 1983, he was shot and killed during a robbery. The bullet struck him in the head. The crime was brutal, and although there were suspects, the police lacked the concrete evidence to make an arrest. The case eventually went cold. A few years later, in a nearby village, a boy named Titu Singh was born. From the moment he could speak, Titu made startling claims. He insisted his name was not Titu, but Suresh Verma. He said his real home was in Agra, where he had a radio shop, a wife named Uma, and 2 children. Most disturbingly, he had a prominent, unusual birthmark on the right side of his head, a scattered, indented pattern in his hair and scalp. It was located in the exact spot where the bullet had exited Suresh Verma's skull. Titu spoke constantly and in great detail about his other life. He described the layout of his shop, the names of his children, and the intimate details of his marriage to Uma. He also described his own murder. He named the man who had shot him, a business competitor named Sadiq Johadian, and described how after he was shot, the man had stolen his wallet and thrown the murder weapon into a nearby well. His parents, confused and disturbed, tried to dismiss it as childish fantasy. But Titu's insistence never wavered. His story eventually reached the ears of Suresh Verma's grieving family. Intrigued and skeptical, Suresh's brother traveled to Titu's village to meet the boy. The moment Titu saw him, he correctly identified him as his brother. He then correctly identified his past life father and other relatives from photographs. Stunned, the Verma family brought Titu to Agra. Without any guidance, the small child led them through the bustling, unfamiliar city streets, directly to the location where the radio shop had been. The shop had since been converted, but Titu pointed it out, correctly describing how it used to look. He then took them to what he claimed was his real home, where he was emotionally reunited with a shocked and weeping Uma, the woman he claimed was his wife, and the two children he claimed were his own. He was able to recount specific memories that only Suresh and Uma would have known. The case became a local sensation. Eventually, the Agra police, who were still stumped by the cold case, decided to investigate Titu's claims. They took him to the well he had described. After a thorough search, they found the murder weapon exactly where the little boy said it would be. The final, chilling act came when the police brought Titu to confront the man he had named as his killer, Sadiq Johadian. Upon seeing the small child, who recounted every detail of that fateful day, details only the murderer and the victim could have possibly known, Sadiq Johadian broke down and confessed to the murder of Suresh Verma. Titu Singh's case is a stark and terrifying story. It suggests that consciousness is not so easily extinguished, and that the trauma of a violent death can be so profound it imprints itself upon a soul, carrying memories, scars, and even the need for justice across the boundary of death itself.
You know who I am. Still here.
Our final story explores what may be the most terrifying reincarnation scenario of all. What if the life you lived before was not one of a hero or a victim, but of a villain? What if your soul is stained with the memories and allegiances of a monster, and you are forced to live with the ghost of someone you were taught to hate? This is the disturbing case of Carl Eden. Carl Eden was born in Middlesbrough, England in the 1970s. From a very young age, he was different. He insisted his name was not Carl, but Robert. He spoke with a thick, guttural German accent, despite the fact that no one in his working-class English family spoke German. He was obsessed with Nazism. He would draw swastikas and German eagles constantly. He told his horrified parents that his father's name was Heinrich and that he was a German pilot. He loved to dress up in a makeshift uniform and march around the house like a soldier. To his family, living in a country that had been devastated by Germany in World War II. This behavior was not just strange, it was deeply shameful and frightening. Then came the nightmares. They were vivid, terrifying, and always the same. Carl would wake up screaming, describing the dream in incredible detail. He was in the cockpit of a German bomber plane. He could see the dials, the controls. He could see the English coastline below. He described the terror of being hit by anti-aircraft fire, the smoke filling the cockpit, the plane spiraling downwards. He described losing a leg in the crash and the feeling of dying in the wreckage. He claimed he was the tail gunner of a Messerschmitt bomber that had been shot down on a bombing run over England. His story was so consistent, so detailed, that it attracted the attention of paranormal researchers and German historians. They investigated his claims. They found that a German bomber had indeed been shot down and crashed near Middlesbrough during the war, in a location that matched Carl's descriptions. The body of the pilot had been recovered, but the tail gunner had been lost in the wreckage. As Carl grew older, he lived a troubled life. He felt like an outsider, a man out of time, haunted by memories that weren't his, and a sense of guilt for a life he couldn't remember, but could still feel. He was an Englishman who in his soul felt like a German soldier who had died trying to bomb his own people. The psychological conflict was immense. The story ends with a final, tragic echo. In 1995, Carl Eden, then a young man, was working on a railway line. In a horrific industrial accident, he was cut in half. His life ended with the same brutal, sudden violence that he had claimed ended his life as a German tail gunner 50 years earlier. Carl Eden's case presents the most unsettling of questions. Was he truly the soul of an enemy pilot, reborn in the land he had once attacked? And did the violent trauma of his past life somehow echo into his present, drawing a similar fate to him once more? It's a story that suggests that reincarnation isn't always a clean slate, but sometimes a prison of memory, forcing a soul to confront the ghosts of who it used to be. A soldier reliving his final battle, a murder victim identifying his own killer, a man haunted by the life of an enemy. 3 true stories that challenge our most fundamental understanding of life and death. They suggest that the soul is a far more complex and resilient thing than we can imagine, and that our memories may not be entirely our own. They force us to look in the mirror and ask a final disturbing question. The face looking back at you, is it the first time it has ever existed? Or is it just the latest mask worn by a very, very old soul? Do you believe in reincarnation? And if it is real, do you think it is a second chance at life or a prison of memory? Share your beliefs and your own stories in the comments below. And if these deep dives into the world's most profound mysteries fascinate you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more true, unsettling stories. Thank you for listening.
Prince of Darkness.